Hey everyone, welcome back to Crypto Cash. Thank you so much for joining me here. Hope you're having a great day. If you're considering a long position right now, I highly recommend you watch all the way through the video so you know specifically what my thoughts are here first, because there's some important stuff we want to talk about, specifically fear and greed index, and then of course net inflow and outflow for ETFs. Those are all super relevant, and obviously some back and liquidation data here too. So kind of starting with the obvious, let's jump in first of all to the market overview and just recognize we are in a better transition right now where altcoins are surging, doing very well. Bitcoin dominance pulling back with the price of Bitcoin is never a great sign though, and that's what we're starting to see right now. We'll talk about that in a minute, but starting here with crypto inflow, or basically the net flow here for ETFs. We see here back last Wednesday and Thursday, we had a pretty significant margin there. Basically, we had a really high amount of inflow there last week. Okay, this week so far, obviously we're just starting off the week, but we can see here so far that it's pretty low and pales in comparison. Generally speaking, when that inflow starts to dissipate, we start seeing capitulation in the price action. Okay, well, I'll show you some better examples here soon, but if we jump over to fear and greed index, this is another thing to recognize. We're in the 70 plus range right now. We're at 70 even. Anytime we've hit 70 in the past, the price for Bitcoin goes sideways and then inevitably pulls back, or the fear and greed index pulls back, price of Bitcoin goes sideways and then up again. So we just saw the sideways and up. It would make a lot more sense for us to see the price action for Bitcoin pull back, concurrent or consistent with that fear and greed index. Now, it's not a guarantee, of course, but statistically, if you look at any time we've seen the greed index being super high, the price of Bitcoin goes sideways and inevitably pulls back. So I'm not expecting us to see a massive monumental retracement. I just want you to be aware that that is an important factor nonetheless. So let's take a quick look here at Bitcoin liquidation levels here and just kind of recognize in the last 7 days here, it's a little easier to see if we kind of make this brighter for you. Last 7 days, we can see there's a lot of liquidation here in that fair value gap. More importantly, that CME gap between 14.5 and 15.5. I think that's the next target for Bitcoin. We can see that heavy accumulation here with majority of that being swept here recently, right? At that 115.7 mark. But just know locally, 113,000 could be the next potential target there. We're starting to see tons and tons of longs pile up. And the more we see that happen, the more likely it is to get hit. Now, keep in mind, we were looking at this yesterday, liquidation long delta. It was at 45 billion, right? That's overextended. I was mentioning that generally speaking, when we see these things, they're due to correct themselves, right? That's exactly why we left our short position open at 120,000 for Bitcoin. We're not trying to get too greedy with taking a long at the top. All that being said, though, liquidation delta is cut in half or third, and we're now between 10 to 15 billion in longs. That's basically these guys right here that are soon to get destroyed because they just keep shoving money into the market, right? So just be mindful of that. I'm not saying the price of Bitcoin can't go up. It just makes perfect sense that it's going down right now. That's the concept there. Otherwise, what we want to look at here, open interest is recognizing that 118,000 is that resistance for us or potential support. However, the price action essentially rejected off 118,000 after consolidating at 117 overnight. Now, I didn't get to see this price action. I was sleeping, of course, but generally speaking, we had a bearish backtest of that horizontal support, previous support turn resistance. That's essentially what it looks like. Now, taking a look here at the charts, let's go ahead and recognize this here as well. Actually, before we jump into the charts, let's look at Bitcoin dominance. We can see it's pulling back, and as Bitcoin dominance goes down and the price of Bitcoin goes down, we can see we're supposed to see stability from altcoins. We are seeing stability, but a lot of correction too. So this is not an exact science, but the overall sentiment here is that Bitcoin dominance is going down. We normally want to be happy about this, but the amount of money is flowing away from Bitcoin, likely going into stable coins, and that's not a good sign. All right, so keep that in mind. Altcoins could take a pretty big hit here today if we do see Bitcoin go much further down here below the 116 range. I think that's kind of like that natural support range for a lot of altcoins. Other than that, let's take a quick look here at CME futures. Just want to kind of drive this home as well. We do have a CME gap between 114.4 and 115.7. Now the price wicked down to 115.7 almost exactly and then turned around here. And now it's at 116.1. But the key takeaway here is that the CME gaps and fair value gaps are commonly filled. And our lower fair value gap here is about 112,000. I think there's a distinct chance we see the 112 to 114 area if the price action obviously cannot reclaim 118,000 today. So we're going to pay attention to that. I think 118 is kind of that important level here for us, that point of control, which so far we're losing, right? We're losing that control, and we can kind of see it reflected here. Or if we were to zoom in, essentially, you'll be able to see that large amount of volume in this upper range. So the key takeaway here is that Bitcoin is not in a phenomenal shape right now just to go straight up. I think the likelihood of this natural pullback is quite high. Okay, anyway, so let's take a look here at the daily time frame and just kind of recognize a couple things and round it out here for you folks. Get you on your way. And we want to recognize we're still above all moving averages. Bitcoin is not broken bearish by any stretch. It's just a natural shift in momentum. We're now under 70 on the RSI. That's an indicator to take profit on your long position if you haven't already. You should have done so honestly last night. Hindsight's 2020, easy to say, but if you've ever watched my videos for any length of time, you'll know that 70 on the RSI is a good indicator of either holding or selling your position, not necessarily opening a short. Now, I know it sounds hypocritical, we have a short position open, but we opened that leading into, I think, the weekend, as a matter of fact, and we were able to average in nicely to that 120K range. All that being said, we can see stochastics topping out for the second or third time here. We're starting to see that resistance, and there's no other way around it. We have a lot of divergences here. We lost 50 on the RSI, stochastic swinging down or bottoming out, so to speak. But we got our RSI that fully tapered off, and our MACD is diverging. So these are all things that are just not super favorable. And when I look at the 4-hour time frame too, I usually like to try to look at these here. The 20-day SMA is at tentative resistance at 118.5, and we've got somewhat support here, of course, or at least some would view that as support. But basically, the moving averages are just kind of letting us know which side of the tracks we're on. We're still in good shape here as long as we don't lose that trend. And once more, that'd be the 115 to 116K range. So losing this level here would be disadvantageous, but it would be very naive to think that we're just going to go straight up from here, just based on the simple way that we're moving, right? We've basically lost our local bottom here, and we're establishing lower lows in a sense. It's still very early to tell, but generally speaking, those are not signs that are super bullish that you want to take a long into. So at this point, I'm still inclined to want to take longs on altcoins here in the relative near future. I'm just going to be patient and wait for a little bit more of a bottom out, and I want to see the CME gap get filled first. Okay, so that's kind of where we're at there. All in all, it's not the worst thing ever. This is standard trading, folks. Nothing to really be too alarmed by, but just make sure that you are patient, and I hope you watched all the way through and learned something today. Please comment below, like the video if you could. It really helps grow the channel, and obviously join us on Twitter, Telegram, and Discord. That's all available here for you as well. So we'll look forward to seeing the next one. Have yourself a great rest of your day. Take care.